So, I'm a 27M, my wife is 25F, and we've been married for about 2 years now. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment, not huge, but enough for us. Things were going great until about 3 months ago when my mother-in-law, 56F, decided to move in. And when I say, decided, I mean she just showed up one day with 2 suitcases, looked around, and said, "I'll be staying here for a while." No warning, no discussion, just boom, she's here. I remember standing there, completely confused, while my wife acted like this was a totally normal thing. I pulled her aside, trying to keep my voice down, and asked, "What's going on?" That's when she hit me with, "Oh, yeah, I meant to tell you, my mom is going through some financial issues and needs a place to stay." Just like that. No prior conversation. No, "Hey, how do you feel about this?" Just bam, here's another person living with us. And before I could even process what was happening, my mother-in-law had already started unpacking, making herself at home like she had just signed a lease. At first, I told myself it was fine. Temporary, right? Maybe a week or 2. But days passed, then weeks, and eventually, it hit me, she wasn't leaving anytime soon. The worst part? She had completely taken over the place. It was like we had adopted a 3rd roommate, except this one didn't pay rent, didn't do chores, and somehow had the biggest opinion on everything. She took over the living room like it was her personal lounge, spreading her things everywhere, throw blankets, stacks of random magazines, even some weird porcelain cat figurines she insisted brightened up the place. She also had a habit of rearranging things to her liking, which drove me insane. One time, I went to grab a plate from the kitchen, and suddenly all our dishes were in different cabinets because she thought my wife and I were keeping things in the wrong place. But the biggest problem? She never contributed a single penny. Not for rent, not for groceries, not for utilities. And yet, she had demands. One time, she told my wife we should start buying organic-only groceries because she didn't want to eat processed junk. I almost choked. Organic groceries? From whose budget? Another time, she complained that our Wi-Fi was too slow. "Ma'am, do you know how much that Wi-Fi costs? And let's not even talk about the 40-minute showers, the constant cranking up of the AC, and the way she'd just leave lights on in every room like she was allergic to turning off a switch." It wasn't just annoying, it was draining me. Every single day, it felt like I was slowly losing control of my own home. It didn't stop at just her taking over the space, she started taking over our lives. My mother-in-law had zero respect for personal boundaries. If I was in the kitchen making food, she'd suddenly appear behind me, arms crossed, judging my every move. "You're using too much salt," she'd say, or, "That's not how you make a proper omelet." One time, I was making a simple sandwich, and she actually took the knife out of my hand mid-spread and said, "You're doing it all wrong." I just stood there, dumbfounded, while she fixed my sandwich like I was a 5-year-old. If I was working in our home office, she'd barge in without knocking and ask, "What are you even doing? You're on the computer all day, do you even work?" Like, yes, I work my ass off to pay for this apartment that you're freeloading in. And don't even get me started on how she started using my things without asking. My slippers. Suddenly hers. My noise-canceling headphones. She took them because I like to listen to my phone without disturbing you too. My razor. Yes, my razor, and honestly, I don't even want to know what she used it for. I kept telling my wife, this isn't normal. She's treating our place like it's hers, and she doesn't even try to contribute. But every time, my wife would just sigh and say, "She's my mom, we can't just kick her out." But the final straw for me, the moment I knew I had to put my foot down, was when she told my wife that I should start giving her money for her personal expenses. Yep. You heard that right. One night, I came home from work, exhausted, ready to just sit down and relax, when my wife nervously said, "Hey, can we talk?" That's never a good sign. We sit down, and she tells me that her mom wants me to give her a monthly allowance. I actually laughed because I thought it was a joke. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. My mother-in-law sat me down and, with the straightest face, said, "Since I'm now part of this household, I think it's only fair that you provide for me the way you provide for my daughter." I swear, I almost checked to see if I was being pranked. She actually expected me to just hand over money every month like she was my dependent. And her reasoning? A real man takes care of his wife's family. Are you kidding me? I straight up told her no. I work hard for my money, and I already cover most of the bills and expenses for me and my wife. I wasn't about to start financially supporting my mother-in-law when she had made zero effort to contribute. She doesn't work, doesn't even try to look for a job, and just sits around all day watching TV and scrolling through Facebook. She got all huffy, acting like I had just insulted her entire existence. She started going on about how her bad back made it impossible for her to work, but somehow, that bad back didn't stop her from walking around the mall for 3 hours when she went shopping with my wife. And let's not forget the time she lifted our entire coffee table to vacuum underneath it. That back seems real strong when it's convenient for her. But my wife? Instead of backing me up, she actually got mad at me. She said I was being selfish and that it wouldn't hurt to help out her mom a little. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife was acting like it was completely normal for her mother to move in without asking, refuse to contribute, take my things, and now demand money from me on top of that. We got into a huge fight, and now my wife is giving me the silent treatment. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law walks around sighing dramatically every time she passes me, whispering to my wife about how some men just don't know how to take care of their responsibilities. At this point, I feel like I'm losing my mind. My wife is making me feel like I'm being unreasonable, but I can't be the only one who thinks this is insane. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to pay for my mother-in-law when she moved in without even asking me? AITA for refusing to give up my honeymoon suite for my brother and his pregnant wife? So, I'm a 30M, and my wife is 28F. We got married a few weeks ago and finally left for our honeymoon, a beautiful, all-inclusive resort that we've been dreaming about for years. We booked a honeymoon suite with a private balcony, a huge bathtub, and an ocean view. This wasn't just any trip for us, it was our time to relax, unwind, and celebrate our new life together after the chaos of wedding planning. The moment we arrived, everything felt perfect. We were sipping drinks, enjoying the view, and just feeling on top of the world. Then, out of nowhere, I got a text from my brother, 33M, and my stomach immediately sank. My brother and his wife, 31F, are expecting their first child, and while I'm happy for them, they've always had this habit of making everything about them. He texts me, "Hey bro, crazy coincidence. We're at the same resort. Let's meet up." At first, I thought, okay, weird, but maybe they just booked the same place without knowing. My wife and I were a little annoyed but figured we'd just have dinner with them one night and move on. But then, about an hour later, my brother texts again, "Hey, can we talk? We have a bit of a situation." I already had a bad feeling, but I went to meet him in the lobby. That's when he dropped the bomb. Apparently, there was a mix-up with their booking, and they got placed in a standard room with no view and 2 twin beds instead of the suite they originally wanted. He told me that his wife was really struggling with her pregnancy and needed a more comfortable space. Then he hit me with, "You guys are young, you don't have kids, and this isn't your first vacation together. Would you mind switching rooms with us?" It would really mean the world to her. I just stood there for a second, trying to process what I was hearing. My wife and I spent months planning this, saving money, and making sure everything was perfect for our honeymoon, and now he was just asking us to give up the best part of it for them. I immediately said, "I'm really sorry, but we booked this suite for our honeymoon. We're not switching." He sighed and said, "Dude, come on. It's just a room. You'll still have a great time." This would make things so much easier for us. He even tried to guilt-trip me by saying his wife had been crying over how miserable she felt in the small room. But I stood my ground. No, we're not switching. You need to talk to the hotel, not me. He looked pissed, but I walked away before he could argue more. I thought that was the end of it. I figured my brother would be a little salty but would deal with it like an adult. I was wrong. Later that evening, my wife and I were having dinner at one of the resort's fancy restaurants, finally starting to relax. That's when my sister-in-law walked in, puffy-eyed, sniffling, and looking like she had just been through a war. She spotted us, walked right up to our table, and in the most pitiful, dramatic voice, said, "I hope you're happy. I barely slept at all last night." My wife and I just looked at each other like, is this really happening? She then started talking loud enough for other guests to hear, going on about how the room was too small, the bed was too hard, and how it was so cruel of us not to help family in a time of need. She even threw in, "I just thought you two would understand since one day you might have kids too." At that point, I was done being polite. I looked at her and said, "I'm sorry your room isn't perfect, but it's not my fault. You need to take this up with the hotel, not us." She scoffed and stormed off, leaving other guests whispering and giving us weird looks like we had just kicked a puppy. But then, my brother got involved. That night, I got another text, this one much angrier, "I can't believe how selfish you're being. We're family. It's not like you're living in that suite, you're just vacationing. My wife is pregnant. Do you really need a fancy tub more than she needs comfort?" He even threw in the classic, "Mom and Dad would be disappointed in you" card, which really pissed me off. I showed my wife the messages, and at first, she was annoyed but torn. She said, "Maybe we should just switch. I don't want this to ruin our honeymoon." That's when I put my foot down. No. If we give in, they'll keep walking all over us. We paid for this suite, and we deserve to enjoy it. She agreed, and we blocked both of them for the rest of the trip. When we got back home, though, all hell broke loose. My parents called, saying my brother had told them his side of the story, making it sound like we were heartless monsters who refused to help a struggling pregnant woman. My mom said, "I raised you to be more compassionate than this." Even my dad, who rarely takes sides, said, "You could have just done something nice for them." My brother is still pissed, my sister-in-law refuses to talk to me, and now half of my family thinks I'm a selfish jerk. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to give up my honeymoon suite for my brother and his pregnant wife? AITA for proposing at my brother's wedding after his bride explicitly told me not to. So, I'm a 32M, and my brother, 29M, just got married last month. His wife, 26F, and I have never really gotten along, mostly because she thinks I don't take things seriously, and always need to be the center of attention. Which, honestly, I think is unfair. I like having fun, I joke around a lot, but it's never meant to be malicious. Anyway, I've been with my girlfriend, 29F, for 6 years, and I had been planning to propose for a while. I even had the ring picked out. The problem? I wanted to do it in a big, memorable way, and no moment ever really felt special enough. That's when the idea hit me, my brother's wedding would be the perfect time. It was already a romantic setting, family and friends would be there, and honestly, I thought it would be beautiful to share that moment with everyone. So, about 2 weeks before the wedding, I called my brother and ran the idea by him. His response? "Dude, absolutely not. That's bride's name's biggest nightmare. Please don't." I won't lie, I was a little annoyed. It's not like I was trying to steal the spotlight, I just thought it would be a nice surprise. But fine, I dropped it, or at least, I pretended to. The more I thought about it, the more I convinced myself that it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't planning to get down on one knee during their vows or anything, just a simple proposal at the reception, maybe during the dance party. I figured my brother was just being overly cautious and that once it actually happened, everyone would be so happy for us that there would be no drama. So, the wedding day comes, and everything is going smoothly. The ceremony was beautiful, the bride was in a great mood, and even I was having a good time. As the reception went on, I started feeling more and more sure that this was the perfect moment. So, during the after-dinner toasts, while people were laughing and in high spirits, I stood up, tapped my glass, and said, "Hey everyone, can I have your attention for just 1 second?" I could already feel my brother's eyes burning into me. I grabbed my girlfriend's hand, got down on one knee, and said, "I couldn't think of a more perfect place to do this. Girlfriend's name, will you marry me?" My girlfriend was shocked, but in a good way. She gasped, covered her mouth, and then started nodding like crazy. The room erupted in cheers, well, most of the room. I barely had time to slide the ring onto her finger before I heard someone slam their drink down. I turned to see my brother and his bride staring daggers at me, their faces absolutely livid. At first, I thought maybe they were just shocked, that after a minute, they'd calm down and be happy for us. But nope. Instead, my brother stormed over to me, grabbed my arm, and hissed, "Are you ****ing kidding me?" His bride was right behind him, shaking with rage. She didn't even look at me, she was staring straight at my girlfriend, who was still overwhelmed and teary-eyed from the proposal. Then, she snapped. In front of everyone, she shouted, "You selfish, attention-seeking asshole. I told you not to do this. You couldn't even give me one night." The entire room went silent. My girlfriend looked completely blindsided, like she had no idea I had planned this against the bride's wishes, because, well, she didn't. My brother kept his voice low but deadly and said, "Get out. Now." I laughed, actually laughed, thinking he was joking or just overreacting. But then 2 of his groomsmen stepped in, and I realized he was dead serious. He was actually kicking me out of the wedding. I tried to say something, but his bride wasn't done yet. She turned to my girlfriend, voice shaking, and said, "I feel sorry for you. Because you just got engaged to a guy who clearly doesn't respect other people's boundaries." That was when it hit me, I had seriously messed up. But at that point, there was no coming back. My girlfriend looked absolutely mortified, and even though she had just said yes, she barely spoke to me as we were escorted out of the venue. I could hear whispers from the guests, people muttering, "Wow," under their breath, and my heart started pounding. Had I really screwed up that badly? The next morning, my phone exploded with texts from family members. My mom was furious, telling me I had embarrassed her in front of all the relatives. My dad just said he was disappointed in me, which honestly stung even more. But the worst part? My girlfriend was pissed too. She wasn't mad about the proposal itself, she was mad that I had used someone else's wedding to do it when I knew the bride explicitly told me not to. She said it made her look bad, like she was in on it, and that she never wanted to start her engagement with drama like this. And then she dropped the hammer, she said she needed time to think about our relationship. I tried to defend myself, saying I genuinely thought it would be a beautiful moment and that people were just overreacting, but nobody saw it that way. Now, my brother won't talk to me, my family thinks I'm an asshole, and my fiancée, if she even still is my fiancée, won't return my calls. So, AITA for proposing at my brother's wedding even though his bride explicitly told me not to.